Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today we're going to be talking about the ABCs. The ABCs of board gaming. I'm going to go through and pick out my favorite game in every letter in the alphabet, starting with actually numbers and then going through A through Z. And if your game starts with the, I'm going to be picking the second word. So if your game is the baby, I'm going to be putting the baby down into the category of B. So I'll be going through and I'm going to try to do this pretty quickly. I don't want this to be like a 2-hour thing. But I'm going to try and go through each of the games pretty quickly and maybe talk about some other games that were almost my favorite game in that letter. So let's just jump right into it. I've got my coffee. I'm ready to go. So let's do it. So starting with the numbers, this was a pretty easy one for me to do. The Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is this pyramid-style card drafting game where you're going to have this pyramid of cards down on the table. And some of the cards are going to be face up, some of them are going to be face down, so you're not really going to be sure. But you're going to take a card that's available, and it's going to unlock other cards that for the other person. This is a 2-player only game. That's one of my favorite drafting games. And some of the other games in the letters that almost made it was the original Seven Wonders. The Seven Wonders, actually. I like that game. It's a big 7-player, up to 7-player card drafting game. But I like Seven Wonders Duel a little bit better. And also, I do really enjoy the 5-minute games, the 5-minute Marvel, 5-minute Dungeon. There's a 5-minute mystery one. I enjoy those ones. But Seven Wonders Duel ultimately was my favorite of this. Going to the A's now. A is for Architects of the West Kingdom. If you watch this channel, I've played a bunch of Architects of the West Kingdom. I love this game. Talked about it a lot. It's a big worker placement game. And what differentiates itself from other worker placement games is in this game, you are actually going to start with 20 workers. While other games, you probably only start with 2 or 3 workers, and you have to get more workers as the game goes on. Usually, that's how those work. But yeah, typical resource management game, but the lots of workers is what sets this one apart. Some of the other games that I almost picked for this were Atlantis Rising, the cooperative game, and Feast for Odin, another good worker placement game. Going to B. B is for Blood Rage. Blood Rage is this big miniatures battling game, but the battling is not really the part that intrigues me. It's the drafting part before the battles all take place. You're going to be drafting cards, and that's going to dictate what your strategy is for that particular game that you're going to be playing of that. And I love that, because at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. You know, it's big bloody battle. It's really not. Your strategy is going to be based on the cards that you pick, so I really enjoy that. Some other games in the B's that almost made it. Bunny Kingdom, a cute little card drafting game, and The Bloody Inn, which is a fun little game. Going to C's now. C's has a very underrated game in my opinion. This is Castel. Castel I've talked about quite a bit, and this is a very different, unique, big giant Euro game that has the theme of building these human towers in Catalonia. And I think the theme is something that really draws me into this game, because it's just so unique, and the gameplay is actually really unique. Just building these tile people for human pyramids is really fun and interesting, very thinky game. So yeah, Castel, and a very, very close second was Circadian's First Light, another underrated gem in my opinion. Great dice worker placement game. Going to D. D is for Dune Imperium. Is a pretty new game. We played this game quite a bit, and I just recently got the Rise of Ix expansion, which I've played twice now, which just increases how much fun this is. This is really good implementation of 3 or 4 different mechanics. You got your deck building, you have your worker placement, you have your area control. There's a hand management aspect to this game. I really like pretty much everything about Dune Imperium now, and with the Rise of Ix expansion, it just increases my love of this game. Going to Ease now. Ease was very close for 2 different games, but I ultimately picked Eco's First Continent. In Eco's First Continent, you are going to be playing these cards and rotating these cards, activating some special abilities, and ultimately building this giant continent out on your game area. Just building the first continent, expanding it, putting trees out, mountains out, putting different animals out. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this game. And the close second of it would be Everdell, a very cute worker placement game. Going to F. F was very easy for me. 5 tribes. There weren't any other games in the Fs that even came close to 5 tribes. There were good games, but 5 tribes stands head and shoulders above them for myself. I love this Mancala style game. Very, very thinky game, but it's ultimately way, way better at 2 players, in my opinion, than the 3 or 4 player count that you can play at. So yeah, really wonderful game. Love it. I love the Jin cards that you can get to give you extra powers and just thinking about your next moves. It's a very, very fun game in my opinion. Going to the next one, G. G is for Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is just that massive, massive game that is unreasonably big, but it has amazing mechanics in it. So there's this dungeon crawl game, but you're using hand management, and it's hand management to the extreme. You're going to pick 2 cards each round, and the cards are split into 2 sides, the top section and the bottom section. You're going to do the top action of one card and the bottom action of the other. And I just really think it's a great system mechanically, and it's just a fun game. Just almost too big for its own good, though. Going to the H's now. H is for Hadara. Hadara is kind of like Seven Wonders killer for me. I mean, I still like Seven Wonders, but I like Hadara more than Seven Wonders. It's a civilization card drafting game that's got a little bit more going on in it than Seven Wonders did, and I think that's what really why I really like it so much. Plus, it's so colorful. It's beautiful laid out on the board. Very, very colorful game, and that really draws my attention right away. Some of the other games in the H's that almost made it and they were right behind it, was Hadrian's Wall and Horrified. Hadrian's Wall is that big giant roll and write. Horrified is one of my favorite cooperative games. Going to the I's. I is for It's a Wonderful World. I just talked about It's a Wonderful Kingdom. This is not on there. It's a Wonderful World, a great card drafting, engine building game about basically producing cubes to build more cards. And I really like the artwork on it. It's pretty silly, some of the stuff, if you pay attention to the cards in this game. One of the games that almost made it, that kind of competed, was Istanbul. Really good, kind of older Euro style game now. Going into the J's. J is for Jaipur. You know, J's, when I was looking through this, I was like, wow, I have not played a bunch of J games. There's I think there was only 20 of them that I've played, so I might have to seek out some J games for future, if I ever do this list again. But Jaipur is a fun little 2-player card game that I have enjoyed over the years. It's kind of become a classic in the board gaming hobby. But yeah, J's is not a very common board game letter starter. Going down to the K's. K is for Kingdomino. I'm going to put the entire Kingdomino series, because I always do when I'm talking about Kingdomino, because there's Kingdomino, Queendomino, Kingdomino Duel, Kingdomino Origins, Dragomino. They're wonderful games, and I love the system of drafting and putting out your tiles to make these regions, but you're going to get multipliers for you're trying to connect the same regions with multipliers in them. It's an interesting game, very simple game. At least Kingdomino is one that I've played with my kid way back when he was just a wee lad, and he could understand it, and so could my nephew, and he was even younger than my son. But yeah, it's a great game. Another one that really was very close was King of Tokyo. It's another kind of kids game that adults can play as well, and Kingdomino's kind of the same way. Kids game, but adults play it as well. So yeah, K's Kingdomino. L is for Lockup. Lockup I've talked about. I've kind of almost become a champion of this game, I feel like. Like, I feel like I talk about this game more than a lot of people do. It's a worker placement game, but it has hidden information. You're going to have different powers of workers, and you're trying to have the most powers in certain spots. Other players can put their workers on those spots, but whoever's got the most power for those characters on that spot gets to take the better action, usually. I just recently got the Lockup Breakout expansion. I have not tried it yet. I'm very excited to do so, though. In second place for L, it was Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game, and I just played this game like for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I played it like 5 or 6 times now. I'm really enjoying it quite a bit right now, and I love the theme of it, and it really feels like the movies. Going on to M. M is for Marvel Champions, the card game. It's a great LCG by Fantasy Flight where you pick a hero and then you pick a villain to fight as, and you play a different scenario. And this game has grown massively. There's almost too much for this game. It has dropped for me. I don't play it nearly as much as I was. For a while there, it was my most played game by far. I love the game solo. Don't really like it multiplayer, though, which is strange. But some other games in the M's that I have been enjoying. An older game, Mission Red Planet. A newer game that I seem to be really enjoying, and I've only played it, I think, 3 times now, is Meadow. I think Meadow has the potential that over the years to just stick around for me. I really enjoy Meadow lately. Alright, going to the N. N is for Nidavellir. Nidavellir is this dwarf drafting game, but you're also bidding on the right to draft these dwarves first, but you're also collecting sets of these different colored dwarves. All the different colors will score very differently, or not very differently, but they will score differently. I also have the expansion for this, Nidavellir, which just adds some more complexity, because the original Nidavellir is pretty simple. It's very basic but fun, and my group has really enjoyed it. Nidavellir adds some more complexity to it. One that was very, very close to taking us was Neuroshima Hex, which is a fun little tile-laying, battling game. Very thinky game as well. Going to the O's. O is for Orleans. Orleans is a bag building game where you are just trying to build up your bag to buy new chips of people that are going to become more powerful in your bag. It's deck building, but in a bag, and it's very Euro style. It's not the best looking game, but mechanically it is very, very sound. It's very fun. I could use a reprint of Orleans, I think, with a brighter board, better components, stuff like that. I think that could really help Orleans. But a very popular game. Another game almost made it was Onitama. Onitama is a 2-player abstract game that's very much like chess. It's like chess with cards that you're playing to move characters or your pawns and stuff like that. Going to P's. P is for Pandemic, the entire series. Pick your flavor of Pandemic. They're all wonderful. I shouldn't say they're all wonderful, but I enjoyed pretty much most of the Pandemic games, with the exception of 1 or 2. Pandemic is the granddaddy of cooperative games. It's what a lot of cooperative games build the games around, and you can understand why, because I would say it's as close to a perfect system as can be, because so many people have copied it, and the formula hasn't changed much for cooperative games. They look at Pandemic and like, yep, that's how you do it. Some other P's that almost made it. Power Grid, an older economic sort of game. It's Math, the board game, in my opinion, and I love it. Another one is Pioneer Days, a fun little dice drafting game. Got to go down on this list now. We're on the Q's. Q is for The Quacks of Quedlinburg, which is a game that I had not played before, like 4 or 5 months ago, when I got to play it at the Magic Meeple Fargo Board Game Cafe store. game that I've really enjoyed. It's this push your luck game, and I've gotten to play it with a couple of the different expansions now as well, which just adds more to it. I've really enjoyed this. This is a game that's not in my collection, but I think it won't be long until it is in my collection. This is one that I want to show the people in my board game group, because I don't think really any of them have played it. I've only played it with the people on the other side of the state that I play games with on occasion. So yeah, Quacks of Quedlinburg, a couple other games while the truck comes down my street. A couple other Q games that almost made it. Quadropolis, which is almost a quintessential city building game. Q is for quintessential. And QE, which is just this fun bidding game, auction game that's just full of laughs for myself. I really enjoy that. Every time we pull it out, I have had a good time. Going to R. R is a new game from last year, actually. R is for Radlands. Radlands is a 2-player game of you getting bases, and you are sending out people to try and destroy the other person's bases. It's a card game. It's pretty simple at its core mechanics, but it is thinky. It's very minimal. You don't have a lot of cards. You don't have a lot of resources to spend, and you have to spend those things wisely. Every decision is aching, but it's full of hard decisions. I love games like that. And some other games, or one other game at least, in the R's. One that would have been number 1 had Radlands not come along this year is Rajas of the Ganges. One of my favorite board game covers, but this is a worker placement game that uses dice as your resources, and it looks beautiful in my opinion. Going to S. S is for a big game. S is for Scythe. Scythe is a big dudes on a map sort of game, but it combines Euro mechanics with Ameritrash games, and it's very thinky. You're going to have to be efficient. You have to be efficient every single turn. If you have like 3 or 4 turns in the game that you're not being very efficient in, there's a very good chance you are going to fall behind. So you're going to have to think each turn. Some other S games would be Space. Space is a fun little dice chucking game. And the Summoner Wars, a 2-player asymmetric game. It's right there. 2nd edition. I never played the 1st edition, so when the 2nd edition came out, I got that right away. Going to T. T is for Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars is a big card game, essentially. There's a ton of cards in this game where you are trying to terraform Mars. You are trying to put down oceans. You are trying to raise the oxygen level. You are trying to raise the heat. So it's all the cards that you're playing that is the goal, to do those 3 different things and get points. And it's this engine building game as well. So you start out not being able to do many things each round, but by the end you are doing a ton of things. You've got your engine rolling. Some other games in T would be another Stonemaier game, Tapestry, and a big Euro game, Terra Mystica, a game I don't own, and I've only played it, I think, 4 times now. Every time I play it, I'm like, God, this is wonderful, but God, it's an ugly game. Going to Use. U is going to be it's not a mystery for most people. It's Unmatched. Unmatched is an asymmetric miniatures card game. You got each player picks a hero out of like the 30, I think there's 27 or something like that available to you right now. You pick one hero out of those, and you get a deck of cards, and you get the miniature. You put the miniature on the map, and you can play cards then. Each person takes turn playing cards, doing different things, whatever their cards say, trying to take the other hero's health down to 0. As a 2-player game, it's okay. I mean, I like it a lot, obviously, but my group plays this as a 2 versus 2 game all the time. That's basically the only way we play it. I love it as a 2 versus 2 team sort of game. Another U game that was up there is Under Falling Skies, which is a solitaire worker dice placement game. I love dice worker placement games. Going on to V's, we're going back to the West Kingdom. We're going to be talking about Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Yeah, right here. Viscounts of the West Kingdom. It's a great little slow motion deck building game where you're moving around your worker, doing different things, building buildings, constructing different things. It's a fun game. I love this. I love how Shem Phillips takes a genre of games and just tweaks it a little bit. Yes, it's a slow motion deck building game where you're only going to have 3 cards in your hand essentially at a time, and they're going to slowly be falling off, and you're going to be replacing one card with another. Great game. Some other games in the V's would be Viticulture, your worker placement game that most people know about, and Voyages of Marco Polo, which is another dice worker placement game. I told you I love these dice worker placement games, but in that one I like it because the player powers are so powerful and unique. Going to the W's. W's is Wingspan. Wingspan is this engine building card game that I really like. A lot of people in my group really like, but some people don't like it. They think it's just an average game. That's fine. But I have really enjoyed it. I have both of the expansions for it. When the nesting box comes out with the 3rd expansion here later this year, I will be getting that as well. I think the 2nd expansion has fixed some problems that some people had with the game, but I've really enjoyed it, even before the expansions. Another W is a very recent game that I just did a review on, is Welcome to the Moon. It's like the 3rd game in the Welcome to trilogy. It's by far the best one in my opinion. It basically gives you 8 different maps to play on. And if you want to learn more about those, go check out my review I did a couple weeks ago on that wonderful game. Oof, gosh. It's kind of getting cold now. Been talking for too long. Going to the X's, and I did not have a lot of choices in the X's. I talked about J's not having a lot of choices. X's, I think I only had 5 games that I had played that started with X, so there's not a ton of choices for this. This is the least amount of choices I had. This is going to be Xenoshift Dreadmire. Xenoshift Dreadmire is a deck building cooperative game where you're defending your base. So there's aliens or whatever they are attacking your base, and you're trying to stop them and not letting them bring your base's health down to 0. This is a game I've only played twice, actually, but I didn't have a lot of choices in the X's. Like I said, I've not played Xia, which is a very, very popular game. Starts with an X. I would like to eventually get to that game, but there's just not a lot of choices in the X's. But yeah, Xenoshift Dreadmire basically gets that slot then, and I think I rated it like a 7 or 7.5, so it's a good game, but maybe not one that deserves to be on this list of best games for that. Going to the Y's now. Y was very difficult between 2 different games, and I essentially went with Yinch. Yinch is an abstract game where basically 5 in a row meets checkers, almost. It's a simple game, but you have to think in this game. I love simple games that give you hard choices. This is one of those. You can teach this game in a matter of 2 minutes, but you are going to play it and think hard. It's going to be, a lot of times it's a very quiet game because both players are thinking so hard. The game that was tied, or kind of tied with it, Yamatai, one of my favorite board game covers as well, but it's also a great game. And Bruno Cathala game, essentially almost a Five Tribes sequel, but a little bit more in-depth and complex. A little bit harder to get to the table than Five Tribes, because I have trouble explaining this game a lot more than Five Tribes. Going to Z's. Z is going to get a game that I just got to play for the first time here this last year, but we've played it a ton. Zombicide, or Zombicide Black Plague. I've played both of those now. I just reviewed Zombicide, and then we got to play Zombicide Black Plague a couple times. I enjoy Zombicide Black Plague a little bit more, but they're essentially very, very close to the same game. Love that game, and dice chucking, hordes of zombies just surrounding you and trying to kill you and all your team. I've had a blast playing this game, and I've played it. This has been my most played game in the last probably 3 months. We've played it quite a bit. So yeah, Zombicide. Also another little game for the Z's is Zombie Dice. Very simple filler game. That is very enjoyable. Push your luck game. Like it a lot. And we have finally finished. We've gone numbers and A through Z. It didn't take super long, but it's longer than my normal video. It's longer than I'm used to talking. My voice is pretty raspy right now. But let me know what you think of all of these games. If you have made your own A through Z list, I would love to see that. That would be interesting to look through. But either way, if you did enjoy this video, as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Take care, everyone.